All right, here we go. We have legendary actor, director, producer Bill Duke is in the building.
Thanks for having me, Vlad.
Hey, man, ever since we had lunch a few years ago, I've been wanting to do this, and I'm glad we finally got a chance to sit down and pull this off. And I'm such a huge fan
Thank you.
of what you've been doing for such a long time.
Thank you. Again, I said, forgive my lip because it's numb from the dentist I just came from, but I'll talk.
That's a true professional right there.
Done.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of people would have canceled. But Bill Duke is like, nah, I got an appointment. We're gonna make this happen.
Not a problem, brother.
No doubt. Well, let's go ahead and start from the very beginning. This is our first interview. So you grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Poughkeepsie, New York. That's right.
Okay. And this was what, the 30s, 40s?
1943.
Okay, so the 40s and 50s, that's when you were a kid.
That's right.
Okay. And a fairly low income family. Both your parents were together though, right?
My parents stayed together, second and third grade educations. They never took welfare or social assistance of any kind. They were very proud. My father worked 3 jobs and mother worked 2.
That's amazing, but they only
7
had a
days a week.
second and third grade education. Oh, why is that? Why did they drop out of school so early?
In those days, we're talking about segregation. They grew up in the South. They saw lynchings. They called nigger barbecues, where they would spin people that were alive on pits until they were dead and dehydrated, and they would hold up pieces of their bodies and smile, hundreds of people. So they came from a very oppressed society. My father from Orange, Virginia, my mother from West Point, Mississippi. So escaping that oppression was their main focus. They wish they had focused on education, and they insisted that my sister and I be educated, but they had other options. They didn't have the same options.
So, okay, let me just do the timeline here. So you were born in the 40s. So your parents, I guess, were born in the 20s?
Not only the 20s, but 1901, 1905.
Okay. So they had relatives, and they were living in the Deep South. So they had, I guess, what, grandparents that were still slaves?
Their grandparents and great-grandparents. Slavery was a recent thing for them. But more than slavery, the inheritance of slavery in the sense that when they were going to church on a Sunday, say it was raining, and say they were on the sidewalk, if a white family came their direction, in the opposite direction, they had to step into the mud and bow their heads until the white family passed, then get back on the sidewalk and walk to church. And every time a white family passed toward them, they had to step into the mud and bow their heads.
Wow, right. Because even after, slavery officially ended, then the Jim Crow laws came in and...
You said a very important thing, officially.
Yeah. Okay, so your parents really just saw some horrific things.
They saw bad things, man.
Yeah. Okay. So you grew up in Poughkeepsie. So at one point they made their way north.
Yes.
Okay, and they settled in Poughkeepsie. So, a lot of people that grew up in various neighborhoods that I've talked to, some of them say, well, I didn't really grow up around a lot of white people, or I've had some negative, some positive experiences with white people. But in your situation, you actually said that you hated white people early on.
Well, when I was called nigger, spook, coon, all kinds of baboon, on the bus, in school, etc. And my first day in kindergarten, I was called nigger and blackie. I remember coming home crying and went to the bathroom and tried to take, they used to have Babo cleanser at those days, and wipe the black off of my skin. I thought maybe if I could do that and people would love me more, and then I was gonna drink some bleach in the bathroom. My mother came in just in time, and because I thought the bleach would whiten me. And I was like, I was 7 or 8 years old. I didn't know any better. But it was a time when you really were traumatized by the way you were treated as a child, and it's not easy to get over. But what happened was in high school, for example, I met some friends that were white and didn't care what color I was. And then Mrs. Walker, my English teacher in high school, I was awkward. I have she's called dyslexia. I don't know if you know what dyslexia is. And I couldn't communicate very well, but I memorized most of Roget's thesaurus. But I used to write in a journal because I was not good at communicating, and wrote poems, and I wrote, feelings. I used to write in her class while she was teaching, and she told me not to do it twice, and I did it the third time. She took my journal, and I was upset. I hated her. I said, there's this white woman going again and being discriminatory against a black person. The end of that year, as I'm leaving the class, she says, Duke, stop. And so I said, what do you want, Miss Walker? She said, sit down. So here we go. She goes under her desk and she pulls out my original journal that she took from me and a book. It was a national poetry contest. She had entered some of my poems into the contest, and I had won some things. And that confused me because this is a white woman that cared enough about me to enter my poems into a contest, and I won. And when I tried to thank her, she said, don't thank me, I believe in you. That was one of the first times I had a mental spin, let's say.
Well, I'm going with the timeline real quick. You were born what year?
1943.
So you were 12 years old when Emmett Till happened.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I want to get emotional, but how can you forget it? Did you ever see the pictures
Yeah.
after they took him from the lake? Looks like a monster, face bloated and half gone. Because they said that he's like a child, right? And that he whistled or something at a white woman. And do you know that years later, she came forth and said he never did it?
Yeah. Yeah.
He died because of that.
Yeah. And it's one thing for us to read about the story now in 2018, but you were actually there when the newspapers, because his mother, which must have been like the hardest thing in the world, she insisted on an open casket funeral and insisted that people take photos of what her son looked like.
Yes.
So everyone could see the type of horrors that was
Yes.
happening in the Deep South.
Yes.
Yeah, and this
It
was
was a pretty it was a difficult time.
Yeah. Yeah, but it did bring a lot of attention to that situation.
Yes.
And that was happening all the time. There was not just one Emmett Till. Emmett Till was happening all the time. Yeah.
A lot of people were murdered. A lot of people were hanged, lynched. And they had actually barbecues of black people. It was a Holocaust, our Holocaust, other than slavery and coming over on the ships. But it's amazing to me the resilience of oppressed people,
Yeah.
It's like some people just give up, but others, my parents had a certain resolve. My parents taught my sister and I something from the age of like 5 and 6 until we left the house. And they had this phrase which I never forgot. And they said, you're no better than anybody else, but nobody else is better than you. And when you take that in from your parents and understand it, no matter what anybody says to you, you remember that. And that was salvation for us.
You were the first person in your family to go to college, right?
To a college, yes.
Okay. And you went to college, and I guess you were thinking about dropping out, and a professor came in and did something interesting.
I had gone to Dutchess Community College in Poughkeepsie, New York, and the president of the college, James Hall, very stern, formal Navy admiral, etc. None of the students liked him because he was so strict, but he was good at what he did. And I graduated from Dutchess, and I got a scholarship, Martin Luther King Scholarship to Boston University. But it was for a scholarship for the academic side, but not for room and board and books. And so I just struggled and got a job, and it was just rough. And so I decided I was going to come back to Poughkeepsie, take off college for a year, earn some dollars from my books, etc., and then go back to BU after the year. And so I went to visit a friend of mine at Dutchess. As I'm leaving, going down the hall, Dr. Hall says, "Hey, Bill Duke, stop." I said, "Hey, Dr. Hall, I got to go." He says, No, come here. I go into his office, and he says, "How you doing at BU?" I said, "Well, I'm doing well, but I'm going to drop out for a year and come back here and work and save some money for my room and board and books." He says, "No, you're not." I said, "Dr. Hall, I can't discuss this." He says, "Wait a minute." And he goes into his vest pocket, pulls out an envelope, and hands it to me. I said, "What is this?" He says, "Open it." I open the envelope, and I pull out, it's a check. And it was a check that paid for my room, my board, my books, and food for the rest of my stay at Boston University. And I tried to thank him. He just said, so it kind of put another question on my racism, put it that way.
Right, because here's two white people
That cared.
who are helping you without asking for anything in return.
Nothing. Zero. I used to call him every year and say, "Dr. Hall, I know you don't want to hear this, but I love you for what you did." And he used to stutter and just hang up.
Okay. So you go to Boston University, and then you go to NYU, to the Tisch School of Arts.
Yes.
And that's where you started getting your acting chops?
Well, my acting chops really started at Dutch Community College, Constance Kuhn, speech and drama class, and we had to do a play every year. And she decided that she wanted to do The Emperor Jones by Eugene O'Neill, and I would be the co-star in the play. And I don't know why, but something happened. It clicked, something. But in those days, I told my parents I really liked this, and they said, "You're out of your mind, and you're not going to be an actor because you're going to get educated and you're going to earn money, because doctors earn money, so you're going to be a doctor." In those days, you did what your parents told you to do. So I took pre-med courses, and they gave us cats and, squalus acanthias and all kinds of things to take home and cut up veins and arteries, and my room smelled like formaldehyde. Everybody laughed at me, and I said, "This is not for me, it's not for me." So they said, "Okay, you're always writing in that journal. English teachers make money. You're going to be an English teacher." So I went away to BU and majored in English, but I'd fallen asleep for the third time in my Chaucer class. I don't know if you ever read Chaucer, but it's the most, I shouldn't say it, but It's boring, okay? Significant historically, but boring. My roommate, Israel Hicks, said, there's a black man up at the Department of Drama and Lloyd Richards, and you've been talking about this acting thing. Why don't you go up there and audition? I went up there, auditioned, and I got in, to my own surprise. And I'm glad there was not YouTube at that time, because the next semester I was dancing across a floor in a ballet class in tights. That's not a pretty sight. So anyway, and once I got that bug, Lloyd became my mentor. I followed him to NYU, School of the Arts, gave him my first job at the Negro Ensemble Company. And then he did a film out in LA for PBS called Gold Watch about internment of Japanese during World War II. And he said, I need an assistant. So I came out and I want to go back. He says, no, you're going to stay here. Just stay here and see what happens. And stayed here for a while and then, got some good fortune and went back to New York and came back out here to stay.
Right, because I guess after that, you started hitting off, doing off-Broadway plays. I guess you did like 30 or so plays during the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually, got your acting skills together on the stage.
I love the stage, and I think stage acting is the foundation of all great actors. I mean, you find there's no take two, no close-ups. I mean, you're on that stage, either it works or doesn't. And I used to stand in the wings, as they call them, and look on at some of the most wonderful actors. You never heard of them for the most part, but some of the greatest talent I've ever known in my life, and just learn from just watching them. And Bee Wind and, Garrett Morris at that time was in a play called Ain't Supposed to Die Natural Death. And I mean, Minnie Gentry. It was like a learning experience.
Well, I guess at one point, being a working actor is not always the easiest thing in the world. And at one point, the money ran out and you actually started to have to panhandle on the street.
Unfortunately, that's the way our business is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up standing in front of, I didn't pay my rent for 2 months. They were going to eject me from my apartment. And I was literally begging for money. And amazing thing happened to me. An older black lady was passing me. I said, ma'am, do you have some change? She looked at me and just passed by. Another person was coming by, and I said, you have some change? I felt a tap on my back. And I turned around. It was that same older black lady. And she looked me in my face and my eyes, and she said, baby, do your mama know you out here doing this? It was a profound moment because it reminded me of my parents' teachings. And if my mother and father saw me out here doing something like that, it would have brought what they call shame to the family. So I never begged for money after that. What I did do is, with my girlfriend, I had an overcoat, and we sewed big pockets into the overcoats. We used to go to A&P and put food inside and steal food from the A&P to survive.
Yeah. I mean, it's a humbling experience, to go through that. I'm sure you look back on that now when you're living in your high rise and going like, wow, like a lot has happened since then.
Part of the prices that you pay in this business, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think people really understand our business in the sense that they see your success, but they don't see the process you had to go through to get there. That's why in my book, I just wrote my autobiography, Bill Duke, 40 Years in Front of Behind the Camera, and I talk about the struggle that most of us have, As you know, only a small percentage of the Screen Actors Guild works annually, like 15 or 20%. And out of that, only 30 or 40% make over $50,000 a year. So you're facing, and what that's called is rejection. I mean, people tell you to get over it, it's no big deal, but if you go up for say 4 or 5 auditions a month, and everybody says, no, 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 not you. People say don't take it personally, but something happens. And to get rid of that pain, sometimes people take alcohol or drugs or whatever, or indulge in things that aren't good for them. I was fortunate enough to find transcendental meditation, so once I found meditation, it saved my life. It literally did, because I was a drug head.
What drugs were you taking at the time?
Cocaine, marijuana, hashish, and the most significant one was acid.
Okay.
Timothy Leary.
I've taken acid before.
Would
You
you
know,
think?
I thought you were going to say heroin, because I guess during that time, with all the
I came
jazz
this close
artists
to
and
heroin.
everything else like that.
This guy took the heroin and put it to my nose like this at a party, and my friend pushed his hand away and said, "Don't do that to Bill." Came this close.
Yeah, heroin is one of those that people don't usually recover from. Once you get to, get down that, that particular road, it's a wrap.
It was the grace of God, man. It was.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is, I'm very fortunate.
So, your first, I guess, big movie was Car Wash?
The first big movie I acted in was Car Wash, the great Michael Schultz.
Okay. And you played Abdullah Muhammad Akbar,
That's right.
a.k.a. Dwayne.
Dwayne, that's right.
Okay. And Car Wash is one of these all-time classics, at this point. I mean, because, you also had Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Danny DeVito. It was
incredible.
a fairly all-star
incredible.
cast.
It was incredible.
Did you know how big that movie
Oh,
was
no,
going
none
to
of us
get?
did. I mean, the great Ivan Dixon was in it. It was a collaborative experience. It was great. We all loved working together, but I don't think any of us knew that it was going to blow up like that, and how long it was going to last in people's mind as kind of a pioneering event, because it had the Pointer Sisters who did music, Richard Pryor and George, they did comedy, and then there was a serious part of it too. It was layered because I was Abdullah and I was frustrated with the world and the system and how unfair it was, and so it reflected a lot of elements of the period.
Yeah, I remember I was watching that scene where you went to go rob, I guess, the manager, with the gun, and he kept saying, like, man, just put the gun down, and you're watching this going like, okay, is he going to shoot him? Is he not? And at one point, you finally just put the gun down, you kind of cried, and it was a very poignant moment in that movie,
Thank you very
to
much.
actually, that scene. You really pulled off, you could tell, like, seeing you at that point, with tears running down your eyes, it's like, okay, this is a very trained actor right here. This is a guy who's not just winging it. This is a guy that's been working on his craft for a while by this point.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, man, because I can appreciate reality shows and stuff, but the craft of acting is a whole different deal, man. That's why I say being on stage, you have to have the craft on stage. And when you bring it to film, it's different in the sense that you don't have this big proscenium because the camera's right here. So you have to learn how to not do too much. But in terms of the acting chops, it gives you a lot of depth and also the courage to surrender, because after you learn all the lines and everything, it's not just about speaking the lines, it's about listening to who you're talking to and responding out of something that it's hard to explain, but responding truthfully to what's been said to you.
Yeah. Any interesting stories working with Richard Pryor during that time?
First of all, Richard was one of the funniest. He was funny, gracious, smart, brilliant guy. But he was funny because he told the truth. I don't know if you ever saw on Saturday Night Live the thing with him and Chevy Chase.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that funny as hell or not?
The word association one?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Then I saw something else about him that was blew my mind. He came out of divorce court after his second divorce, and he was literally bawling and crying. And the reporter said, "Richard, why are you crying?" In a classic line, he said, "Man, she took everything but the blame."
Yeah,
I loved it.
I interview a lot of comedians, on Vlad TV, and whenever I ask about, the all-time greatest stand-ups, they all say Richard Pryor. Eddie Murphy's usually number 2, but Richard Pryor is pretty much always number 1.
I love George Carlin. George Carlin was a genius.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And George Carlin just told the truth. He made you think about things in a totally different way.
You go and do Car Wash. You do some TV stuff, and then the next big movie was American Gigolo
Yes,
with Richard Gere.
Richard Gere.
Yep. He was the male sex symbol of that time, of that era.
Big time. He was worshipped.
Yeah. And you actually played a gay pimp.
Yes.
You were his pimp, actually.
Yeah, his pimp. Yes, and
his pimp.
I consider myself a businessman,
Right.
and whether you were a woman or a man, I sold you for a price.
Right. What was it? Did you have any reservations about playing a gay character?
Yes, I did. But my agent really talked me into it because, number one, I'm working with Richard Gere.
Yeah.
And I think was it Paul Schrader?
Yeah, Paul Schrader's the director. Yeah.
Yes. He had directed a movie before that with Richard Pryor and it was Cotto. I forgot his last name. But it was about something blue, I think. But it was about an auto factory, and they both got killed in the end. But it was such a brilliantly done movie. I wanted to work with him also. So whatever my hesitations were, I put that aside to work with Richard Gere and Paul Schrader, and that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I guess Richard Gere accidentally kills you
Yes.
in that movie.
Yes.
Off the balcony.
Yeah, and my boots were in his hands.
Right. Okay. So you go and do some movies, some TV, but then you actually switch gears, and I guess you go back to school to learn directing.
Yes, I always wanted to. I directed plays. I wrote my own plays. I directed other people's plays in New York and here in LA. But I was always intimidated. I always wanted to direct film, but I was always intimidated by the equipment. I mean, the camera, the lights, the sound, all the crew members. I mean, it was like intimidating. So I was on a show called Palmerstown, USA, which Norman Lear and Alex Haley co-executive produced. With Jonelle Allen, and we co-starred in it with some other good people. But I didn't work for 2 years after that. And so a friend of mine said, Bill, why don't you just apply to AFI? I applied and I got in. And so Tony Vellani and Gene Furstenberg were running AFI at that time. Up at the mansion off of Sunset. And it was one of the most, how can I say, powerful experiences I had in my life. The book at that time that they went by was by Michelli, The 5 C's of Cinematography. They taught the details of that. And once you learned that, you understood filmmaking. And it's not just saying action cut, but what is a character arc? What is a story arc? What are you trying to say in the film? I mean, what are the visual statements you can make that help tell the story? They taught the specifics of that. And the thing that was cold-blooded about it, they're preparing you for the reality of Hollywood. So After every quarter, you have to go down in the basement of the mansion, and they had a list. If your name was not on the list, that means you were out. And luckily, I stayed.
Well, I mean, in 2018, it's very normal to have a black director. I mean, Jordan Peele does his thing. You know, Ryan Coogler is doing Black Panther. But you were actually one of the very first black directors in TV and movies.
Yes.
You were one of a very, very small group of pioneers.
I was very fortunate, you know. I'll tell you, I got my first job in TV. Out of their AFI, I took the film The Hero, which is a short film I made at AFI that got some recognition. I took it around to all the studios and networks, and no one would give me a shot. They say, we'll give you a second shot, but not the first. It's too much bigger risk. So I was depressed, and I do transcendental meditation, so I went away to a retreat. I was there for a week, and my agent calls me and says, David Jacobs at Knots Landing wants you to come in. I said, wow, okay. Go to David Jacobs' office, and he and I talked for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I leave, and I said, this is never going to happen. A week passes, and my agent says, you got the job. I was in shock. I mean, directing not one of the hottest shows on TV at the time. I told everybody I knew. So I, went there and, in pre-production, and my last day of pre-production, I think it was Joel Wallenstein was the line producer at the time, came to me and said, hey, Bill, pre-production was great, but I knew you were going to be good based upon your reel. I said, what reel? He said, well, the reel that you turned into David. I said, no, I just got an AFI. He said, wait, whoa. He goes into David Jacobs' office. David Jacobs had mixed my reel up with somebody else's. And that's how I got my first job.
So you got hired by accident, basically.
But I got hired.
But you got hired and you kept the job. At one point, you started directing Dallas.
Yes, I did.
Which was
the first black director
like the hottest. Yeah, it was like the hottest show on television. But it's a very white show. Like, I don't know if there are any black people on Dallas at all.
No.
And from what I understand, the first time that you showed up, they didn't believe that you were the director. I guess they thought you were a delivery man or something.
Well, I show up in my used car, which I washed and shined myself, and I had a nice jacket on with a tie, briefcase. My car, I wanted to be impressive on Dallas, and I drive up to the gate, I roll the window down, and the security guard looks at me and he says, who are you delivering for? I said, what did you say? He said, who are you delivering for? I looked in his face, as I say in my book, I said, I wanted to say, I'm going to deliver a can of whip-ass to you because of what you just said. I didn't say that because the night before, Dr. King had a video on TV where he talked about, don't react in such a way and da-da-da-da. And so after I recovered from that, I looked at him and I said, there must be some misunderstanding. I'm the first black director on Dallas. I'm delivering my talent to the show, and they hired me to do so. So open the gate. The most rewarding thing was the gasp from the guard.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically breaking glass ceilings at this point.
Well, yeah, but when glass cracks, it cuts. So you're able to, yes, if you're able to survive that, it's good. But I was very fortunate to be able to shatter that ceiling to a certain extent.
And you kept directing stuff. I guess you did episodes of Miami Vice, which was my favorite show.
Yes,
during
great
that time.
show.
Oh, that was, Crockett and Tubbs, forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing Hill Street Blues, a bunch of stuff.
Yes, many shows.
And then Schwarzenegger came around.
Well, you know,
So,
when I went to audition for Commando, Joel Silver embraced me, my talent, and doing Commando was really my first big movie. And working with Arnold was, first of all, Arnold was one of the funniest people ever meet on the earth. This big guy, you know, but great sense of humor, funny, and humble too, and supportive of the other actors on the set. So that was a great experience working with him.
right. And for those that are too young to really realize, Arnold Schwarzenegger at that time was the equivalent of Dwayne Johnson today. The
right.
biggest action star in the world.
right.
No question.
That's right.
I guess Sylvester Stallone may have been number 2 at this point, but this was a huge worldwide phenomenon,
That's right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. So a Schwarzenegger movie was essentially the biggest type of movie that you could be in. And here you are co-starring, well, now you're, as an action star, as one of the GIs right there with him. Mm-hmm. And the movie was a huge hit.
Commando did very well. Did very well. And it was his foundation for his next movie, which was Predator.
Right, which you were in as well.
Yes. They invited me to do that too.
Yeah, and you had a hell of a performance. I remember that one scene when you were like, look up in the trees, like I see him,
Yes.
like the tension of like, I guess that was the first time you actually sort of saw the Predator in his
Yes.
camouflage suit. It was
Yes.
it was a hell of a movie, man. I mean, The Predator is one of these all-time classics to this day. I mean, which is why they ended up remaking it eventually.
It was I cannot tell you the experiences that, totally, it's like it was a great experience. We all bonded because we were in conditions that were unbearable, heat sometimes over 100 degrees, up in the middle of the jungle of Puerto Vallarta. Then we went down to Palenque near the Guatemalan border. And it was, I say this in the book also, that, the first week we were there, the caterer put netting around the tent that we ate because of the bugs and the animals. And the first week, no matter what the food was, there were bugs in it. We say, take this crap back. We're not eating it. There's bugs in it. But by the second week, there was no more food. So the bugs became what we call protein.
So you guys ate the bugs.
Yeah.
Any crazy Schwarzenegger stories between those two movies?
Well, Arnold was always, he's a jokester. But, one of the crazy things in terms of Predator, we were in this hotel in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta. And he just bought out 2 ballrooms and had tractors and trailers from LA ship in gym equipment that filled the ballrooms. So the ballrooms became gyms. And every day that we shot, and I did it for like a week or so, and then I didn't. But him and the guys, Jesse and the other guys, let's say we had a 7:30 call on the set. They would get up like at 3 or 4:30. Then they run a few miles. Then they come back and work out in the gym for an hour and a half. Then go to breakfast, and then go to the set. That was the routine. I did it for a week, and they called me a wimp after that, but I didn't care. But it was crazy.
You go and do those 2 movies, and, you're still directing. And I didn't realize this until I started actually, going through and doing research before this interview. You directed one of my all-time favorite movies, Deep Cover.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had no idea. All these years, I've been such a mega fan of that movie. I'll be honest. I've said this before. I actually got inspired. I mean, not in a good way, obviously, but I actually got inspired to actually mess around with drug dealing after watching that movie.
Wow.
Watching that movie, I had a friend that was involved in some street shit, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be the white business guy, and he's the street guy, and I'm gonna do the deep cover thing, and he ripped me off right away, and I lost a bunch of money, and that was the end of my drug dealing career. But
Well, I got understand. It was the movie gave insight, but you know it was based on a book.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And the guy who wrote the book, inspired the movie. Henry Bean, read the book and then wrote the film based upon the book. But this was a guy actually was in the service, and he used to go after what they call the mules on the street that sold the drugs. But he asked himself one day, wait a minute, they're not growing it, they're not importing it. Why don't I look at the guys that are growing it and importing it? So he went to the high ups above him, and they told him to stop, and he didn't, and he got fired.
Well, it was a hell of a performance. Lawrence Fishburne and I guess Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum, Clarence Williams the third, some really good people. I was very fortunate, to get those guys.
Hell of a movie.
Thank you.
But what made that movie even more special as a hip hop fan was Dr. Dre did the score.
Dre and Snoop.
Right. Well, Dre did the score, and Dre and Snoop did the single.
That's right.
Deep Cover. And this was kind of an interesting time because this was after Dre had broken up with Eazy-E and left Ruthless Records.
That's right.
And we hadn't actually heard any new music from Dre in, I think, a couple of years or something, because he was going through contract disputes and everything else like that. And the first time you heard new music from Dre was Deep Cover. Mm-hmm. Did you and Dre already know each other?
No.
When you brought him in?
No,
Not
I didn't
at all.
know him. I just knew his music and his work.
Okay.
And I really liked a lot of the lyrics. They were very controversial at the time, but they, powerful stuff. And I wanted that kind of feeling to the film. And so that's why I brought him in.
Yeah, that was, I think, the only time that Dre actually scored a movie. I don't know if he actually did another score before or after.
Well, he didn't really score the entire film. He lent that music to it, and the composer, I forgot his name now, really took those themes and wove it through the film.
Ah, okay. Okay, but on the soundtrack, that was when Dr. Dre finally came back.
Yes.
With a new artist named Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Snoop Doggy Dogg.
When you first heard it, I remember me and my friends are like, "Oh yeah, this is the next big rap star right here. Here we go." Like,
right.
Dre's about to do it all over again. Mm-hmm. And because the Deep Cover soundtrack came out first, and I guess I remember the soundtrack. Dre kind of had some of his like new artists kind of sprinkled in and stuff like that. And then after that, that's when the Chronic came out.
Right.
And then it was just like, forget it. That
Took
was
off.
like, yeah, it was the biggest thing in the world. But Deep Cover was actually what launched that whole movement.
Foundation.
Did you know how big it was going to be when he actually submitted all these songs and everything?
I thought none of us did. We had passion for the film and its message, but in terms of it blowing up like that, I think it was New Line that did it at that time. And I don't even know if New Line knew that, but it was one of the most satisfying experiences for me as a director, working with that talent and the theme itself and Dre and everybody. It was very rewarding.
Yeah, no, every character in that movie was a standout. Even the Spanish dude, who beat that guy to death in the beginning.
Yes.
And yeah, man, that was a masterpiece.
Thank you.
Because I looked through some of the other movies that you directed, like Rage in Harlem and Hoodlum and stuff like that. But I would say Far and Beyond, that was, to me, your best work.
So glad you liked it, man.
As a
Thank you.
director.
Thank you.
The movie that everyone from this generation knows you from.
God, don't say it. I know what you're going to say.
You know what I'm going to say. Menace to Society.
Yes. I only have one scene. One scene.
One scene. You were not a recurring character.
No.
You were not on the poster.
No.
Your whole part was, I think, maybe 5 minutes long at the most.
That's right.
So what led into you actually doing that role?
I love the Hughes brothers. I think they're brilliant writers and also directors, the collaboration. And I like the story too because it was a street story, but it humanitized the kids, you know? It wasn't just like these are these bad little gang members, but it showed their humanity also. And that one, that one scene, it's amazing. I did a film recently called Mandy with Nicolas Cage, and we're in Brussels, Belgium. I'm in Brussels, Belgium, and kids come up to me and say that line in Belgium. You know what I'm saying? It's in all the films I've done, that's the one line they remember.
Can you redo that part?
Now?
Yeah.
No, you done fucked up, right?
I mean,
You said
that
you
line,
bought no.
that
You
line,
said you bought the bottle of beer at 3:00, and now you're saying it's 5:00. You know you done fucked up, right?
and then Tyron Turner was like, no, I said that no, I got the bottle in the.
You started stuttering. Remember that?
Yep. No. You see what I said was.
No. You know you done fucked up, right?
That role of you playing the detective in that movie, you actually based it on the way that your father used to talk to you.
Oh, listen, my father's position. Say my sister and I he asked us a question, right? And let's say we gave him, in these days' terms, an alternative fact. He would look at us, right? And in these kinds of words, he would be silent. Say, "You finished?" Say, "Yeah, we're finished." He would say things like, "I'm not as dumb as you look." It's like if my father and mother told my sister and I not to ride our bikes on the street, but on the sidewalk because of traffic. If Mrs. Johnson, the next door neighbor, saw us riding our bike on the street, she would step in front of our bikes, take us and put on her living room couch and say, "Don't say a word." She'd pick up her phone and call my father at work. She would say, "Bill, they're riding their bikes on the street." He would say, "I'll be there in an hour." That was the longest hour of our lives. Because we knew what was going to happen. He didn't never raise his voice. He just would sit us down and explain and ask us, "Do you understand what the issue is here? Do you understand the problem? And there are consequences to." And we think because he talked to us, we could talk through it and then he'd forgive us. And he'd finish, he'd say, "You understand? Good. Go out and get a switch."
You'd have to go get the switch that he would then use to beat you with.
Yes. But he'd explain why we're getting beat.
Oh man, you actually played a cop in a bunch of different movies. You were kind of like the go-to cop guy for a while. It's funny because a lot of people call me the police. The way I interview people, people say that my interviews sound like interrogations. So
But they're good interrogations.
I guess I got it from you.
Okay, that's all good.
Right, because you were actually in one of the episodes of the Boondocks.
I love Boondocks.
I was actually in one of the episodes of the Boondocks also.
Oh wow! I
was playing myself.
And what's his Uncle Root? What's his
Uncle
name?
Ruckus.
Ruckus.
Yeah.
One of the funniest characters ever. I just thought that was so. I don't even know why it went off.
Creative differences between the two main writers. They just stopped getting along, and then I guess they wanted more money out of Sony. There was a big convoluted reason. It was my favorite show on television. Like the fact that I got to be in that show animated as myself, that to me was like okay, I made it. You know?
I thought you guys were brilliant, man. I'm serious. I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
the way you handled relevant social issues with humor was brilliant, really.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you basically reprised your character from Menace to Society
That's right.
in the Boondocks. You basically were playing the same character.
That's right. It was fun.
Man, listen. You know we done fucked up, don't you? People are gonna remember that way past both of us being gone. Like that's just one of those timeless lines, and you still see memes to this day, like on Instagram.
Yes.
Like hell of a line, man. And the fact that that was your only line in the whole movie. I mean, you stole the show in that whole movie.
I loved it, man. We had a good time. We had a great time.
Yep. I mean, it's interesting because I interviewed a lot of, I interviewed Tyron Turner and MC8, and they both kind of explained to me how Tupac originally was supposed to be in the movie.
He had an opinion about his character. Every time it came down to him to start reading, he would stop and just start going, well, why my character ain't this? Why this? Why that? So he wanted them to write in the script why he turned Muslim. Show why. Okay, what? Oh, because I guess the depiction of it was supposed to be his little brother had got killed, whatever, but they wasn't going to show all that.
Okay.
It was just the point of view.
So there was more to the story than just he just showed up late and they...
Yeah,
Okay.
he didn't want that character. Or make my character so the audience can understand why I'm a Muslim now.
My version of it is Tupac came into the reading. We were all there. Me, I don't know if MCA was there yet. It was me, Lorenz, Jada. We're all at the reading or whatever. And Tupac, we all started rehearsing and reading or whatever. And in the middle of it, Tupac was like, man, I don't know. I can't get into this character. It's just, I need more meat. I need some more, And then Alan Hughes was like, Tupac, you interrupting the session. Let's just finish reading. So we start reading again, and Tupac like, I'm sorry, I just can't get in. And then Alan Hughes was like, Tupac, why you acting like a bitch? You're acting like a bitch right now. You acting like a straight bitch. Let's step outside. This is what I hear. So Tupac and Alan Hughes step outside. Alan comes back in, and Tupac never returns. That was the last time I seen Tupac.
He ended up beating up the Hughes brothers later on at a video set over that situation. So
They were brilliant guys, man. They're brilliant guys, and Tupac was brilliant too, man. I just loved his work, and died much too soon, man.
Oh yeah. If Tupac was still alive, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, because he was already becoming a movie star in his own right at 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the whole rap music scene would have been totally different if he had lived also.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Now you described acting as a pimp and hoe game. Explain that.
Well, no. Well, I say this: business is a pimp and hoe game. I mean, it's like at agencies in the old days. Did you know that they talked about actors, right? To say that they're in our stables. Is that actually use the word? You heard of the word stables?
Yeah, it's a pimp term.
Yeah, we're in the stables. Yeah. And I had an argument with an agent of mine once. Because at a certain point, people were calling me because they knew my work and were bringing the work to the agent, And I said to the agent, I said to him, it's like, I appreciate the work that you're doing, but I'm bringing a lot of work to you guys, And I said, this is a pimp and hoe game. I said, but, I don't look good in fishnets and pumps. And so why don't you get out in the corner and bring something to me? And the agent at the time was not happy with what I said, but he had to admit that what I said was true.
Well, you said something interesting in an interview that you did recently, and you said that that a lot of times people want success more than they want self-respect. And sometimes you get the success, but knowing the price that you paid for it, you choke on it for the rest of your life. We talked about how early in your career you played a gay character. And, I've had interesting conversations with people over the years where, they felt that, as a black actor, for you to reach the next level, you have to dress up, as a woman and drag and, kind of undermine the male masculinity that, that people pride themselves in. Did you ever feel at times that, okay, I just can't take this character because I'm going to lose my own self-respect by doing this?
Not only in the past, but recently. I mean,
Okay.
it's, what can I say? It's important to distinguish the difference between the battle and the war. Sometimes, I mean, I play chess. I love chess. And sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. But I think you have to be selective in terms of what battles you choose to lose. Because when you do a film, it lives far past your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You're known by what people see. And so you want to leave a legacy that's, the compromises are less than the accomplishments. Make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you turned down roles because you just felt like, okay, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I do this.
Sleep is very important.
Right. Being in the industry now 40 plus years, we're now at a very interesting time with the whole Me Too movement. You have people like Harvey Weinstein that at one point was at the top of his game, head of a big production house. Now he's filing for bankruptcy. He's fighting he's trying to stay out of prison. And you've said that you've seen situations where women have exchanged sexual favors for roles in movies and so forth. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I don't think a man should approach any woman in a disrespectful way. Whether it's touching her or any kind of verbal abuse or a verbal insult on any level. That should not happen. And I think people who do that should be punished for it, and they are. So I think that that's very, very important. On the other side of the scale, I have witnessed very powerful men in this industry being approached by women in a way that, how can I say, that the man knows that he can have anything he wants. And I think it comes out of desperation. And today it's even, I mean, people do things on, I used to look online and see people doing things, I mean, that you couldn't imagine people would have done 20 years ago in terms of public for attention and fame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, multiple sex partners doing, and they get recognition, but, I'll tell you a funny thing that happened to me. This was like 2 or 3 years ago now. And I'm not one of the big guys. I'm just telling you that's what happened. I'm in Trader Joe's and I'm shopping. And this girl in her 20s, early 30s comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're Bill Duke the actor, da da da, you know, I love your movies, etc." I said, "Thank you very much." So I go around the corner to another aisle to shop, and she comes up to me. She says, "I'm not trying to be rude, but you would make a great candidate for Friends with Benefits." Now, I'm not joking, man. I had never heard this term in my life. I'm in my 70s. I don't know that language, right? So I look at her and I said to her, "Are you talking about my Social Security benefits?" She looks at me for, it seemed like a minute, and just walked away. I went home and told my daughter what happened, and my daughter laughed at me for at least 3 minutes. I never heard the term before, so
Did you know Bill Cosby personally?
I met him a few times. Yes, I wasn't friends. I didn't know him. No.
Okay. When you look at, well, number one, before I ask this question, a lot of people that I talked to in Hollywood, they said that they had heard these stories about Bill Cosby and the rape allegations and stuff like that. Did you hear these types of stories before it all came to light?
Never.
Never. Okay. When you see what happened, a man who is now in his 80s, who has an unbelievable catalog. I mean, you know, you could despise Bill Cosby for what he got convicted for, but when you look at what he's done and how he's changed the perception even of black people in America, like, you know, D.L. Hughley does not like Bill Cosby, but he even said that he doesn't think that there would have been Barack Obama if it wasn't for the Cosby Show.
I don't think President Obama is president without Bill Cosby. I think that that's absolutely true. But you can be both profane.
Wait. You said that there would not be an Obama if
I
it
don't
wasn't for
think
Bill
that.
Cosby.
I think that Bill Cosby showed America that they could have a black father. So if they could have a black father, they could have a black leader. I think he set the table for Barack Obama.
Bill Cosby was a pioneer. I don't know if people in this country actually saw black families in their humanity before the Cosby Show. He brought humanity to it in a way that, whether you're black, white, Indian, Arabic, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever, if you had a family, he brought universal family issues to the table. Every single week you watch the show, there was something you could recognize that you've gone through or somebody you know has gone through. So, and in terms of some of the films he put together, etc., he was a pioneer in a lot of ways. The fact that he tried to buy NBC at one time, that was unheard of. I mean, a black man buying a network, that was unheard of at the time. So, and then the people don't know, but the money he gave to black universities, I'm not talking about thousands, I'm talking millions. Mm-hmm. You know, it was amazing. And that's why we loved him in our community, because he gave back. He set examples that we wanted to follow. He was the perfect father figure, etc. I don't think there were many people at all that knew all the other stuff that was happening. I'd never heard of it.
I mean, right now, as we're talking, Bill Cosby's sitting in a cell in Pennsylvania. You know, were you surprised that he actually got convicted?
Not really. Because of the number of women coming out, their ethnicities, it was, how can I say? It was crushing in the sense that, you know, here goes another black man, you know, down the tubes, you know, and in a relatively shameful way. And when I talk to people about it, you know, in our community, they're really heartbroken because, I mean, when I say he was a hero, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, he was the father figure to follow, you know, and the mother was a mother figure to follow, to be like. And to see that it did a lot.
Yeah, I think that the current generation, the millennials, don't realize how huge Bill Cosby was in his
was
heyday.
gigantic.
Like, just to put in perspective, Coca-Cola, the biggest soft drink company on earth, when they introduced New Coke, Bill Cosby was the spokesman, was the one who presented this. The biggest soft drink company in the world, making the biggest announcement they've ever made, they went and got Bill Cosby to make that announcement.
Right.
That's how big he was. He was literally the biggest celebrity on earth for quite a while.
Many, many, many years.
Many years. Yeah, it's crazy. To go through all that and to have your legacy completely destroyed is, yeah.
Do you think he'll die in
those
jail,
things.
or you think they'll give him a break, or you think he'll be the whole 10 years?
I mean, they gave him 3 to 10 years. He'll probably do 3. I mean, I doubt he's gonna, start a lot of fights. I don't think he's gonna stab anyone in prison or, cause any riots or anything else like that. I'm sure he'll be a fairly good, quiet prisoner during his stay in there, and quietly do his time. Yeah, crazy. Now you actually created a documentary called Dark Girls and Light Girls.
Yes.
And this actually was based on your own personal experiences, seeing how women of different complexions were treated as you were growing up.
Yes, how I was treated, how I saw women being treated, but more specifically, racism in our own community, based upon slavery principles. A lot of the racism in our community is based upon the house Negroes versus the field Negroes. And the house Negroes were the ones who Massa had sex with a slave, and she'd have a baby. And because they were mixed, black and white, they have the privilege of working in the house as servants, cooks, maids, etc. But if you were dark, you worked in the field from sun up to sundown. And that was the division. And the field Negroes were not fond of the house Negroes because they had privileges. And the house Negroes were not fond of the field Negroes because they were privileged. Until this day, if you go online under hashtag Team Lightskin, hashtag Team Darkskin, you'll see light-skinned black women and dark-skinned black women working over beauty issues, and each of them has over 300,000 members. The irony is I have white female friends who go to tanning salons once or twice a week, become darker, crinkle up their hair, get Botox lips and butt lifts to look more ethnic.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be black except us.
It's interesting because recently I interviewed a rapper from Florida. His name is Glock 9, and he's I believe he's Haitian, and he's very, very dark skinned, darker than you actually, I believe. And when I was talking to him, I asked, would he have a baby with someone of his own complexion, and he said definitely not.
I know if I'm fucking with you, I'm black as fuck, right? I'm black as shit.
Yeah, black is beautiful though, man.
So I know if I fuck with a black bitch, we gonna have a black ass baby.
So?
I ain't with that.
Why?
'Cause I'm already black as fuck.
So?
I can't. No.
It went viral afterwards, and everyone kind of got on him and everything. And he still, and he responded. He said, "Listen, none of you guys know what I went through growing up, so you guys can't tell me
That's right.
what I'm gonna do. Fuck y'all."
Well, do you know that I think it's 50 billion? Did you know that skin bleach, I think, is a $50 billion business? Globally?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's
Skin
crazy.
bleach. Have you seen Sammy Sosa?
Oh yeah, he looks crazy.
So I'm simply saying that this is an issue that exists today in a big way. There was in Dark Girls, my movie, we interviewed some women from Africa, and saw the African women in Africa, and some of them bleached their whole bodies, and they were pregnant, and they knew that the bleaching could impact the baby, but they still bleached their entire bodies.
Yeah, there's actually hold on, I could actually pull this up. I could show you what I'm talking about. There's a really famous reggae artist named Vybz Kartel.
Yes,
You know about him?
yes.
And he's in prison right now for murder. In Jamaica.
Really? Didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. He got convicted of murder in Jamaica, but he bleached his skin, and just recently, let me show you a picture of this. His 13-year-old son
Oh,
did the same thing as his dad. 13 years old.
you see, I think you saw in Dark Girls this little girl, I think she was 5. And in my film, she's sitting in front of these dolls,
Yeah, the doll test. Yeah, I heard
the
about
doll
this.
test. And she's very dark like me, right? The little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychologist asks her questions. They say, point to the beautiful doll. She points to the white doll. Point to the smart doll. She points to the white doll. Every time they ask her a question like that, she points to something that's opposite of herself. So
Yeah.
it's ingrained at a very early age. And so you come up with this, it's actually traumatizing experience.
Oh yeah.
And you don't just
Oh, yeah.
get over it. If you've been told you're ugly, one of the things in my film one of the moments that I never forget is this mother is driving her daughter from school with the daughter's in the back seat and her best friend's next to her in the passenger seat. And she looks in the mirror back at her daughter and she says to her friend, "Look how beautiful my daughter is, the cheekbones, the eyes, Can you imagine how fabulous she would be if she had some lightness to her skin?" This is in front of her daughter. And my friend, she's not saying it in a way that's trying to in any way damage her daughter. This is an ingrained belief. She's just wishing her daughter could be lighter.
It's sad, man. In 2018, that we're still having this conversation.
I think it's
In 2018. But I think a lot of people don't realize, when people say, "Well, slavery was a long time ago, get over it," but America's actually had slavery longer than they didn't have slavery.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's right, true. And we still suffer from the trauma of that. It was our Holocaust, and people are still suffering from it in a lot of ways. And we have to do something about it. We can't keep complaining and suffering and saying, "Oh, I'm not doing this or that because of segregation or slavery or whatever." And we have to get off our butts and start to save our communities. And that's imperative, especially Black men and women. But to suggest that it had no impact and still has, Deepak Chopra wrote this brilliant book, which I read, called Super Genes. And it talks about genetic inheritance. And they did this experiment, him and his partner in the book did this experiment on this calf, female calf. And she was fenced in a fence that was electrified. And they fed the calf and everything. And she grew into an adult, female cow. And they brought a bull in and she got impregnated. And, but one day before she was impregnated, the female calf touched the fence with her nose and burnt her nose. And burned her, but it healed. So once she was impregnated, the calves came out, little cows came out. And they watched those cows for a long time. Not one of those cows ever went near that fence.
Yeah, I mean, you pass down your trauma
Genetically.
genetically. Yeah, I've heard that before.
And slavery has been passed down genetically.
When you hear Kanye West saying slavery was a choice and, you know, they were there for hundreds of years, it must have been a choice. How does that make you feel?
I think it's a combination of anger and sadness. There's a book that was written by these two white gentlemen called Without Sanctuary. If you ever get a chance to read it, it is one of the most profoundly disturbing books I've ever seen in my life. It's a pictorial history of lynchings and what they used to call nigger barbecues. I'm talking about children, women, male adults lynched. And then they used to put us alive on spits with a fire beneath it and turn us and roast us until we dehydrated. And they'd pick up pieces of the bodies, and hundreds of whites would be standing and taking pictures with a body piece in their hand. They have the pictures, they show the pictures in the book. And they say, just get over that? You don't get over that. You have to move on. You have to live your life. You have to grow. You have to accomplish. You cannot use excuses. But that is in spite of your history. Get over it. See, people who say those, so I'm not so sure that Mr. West has, you know, I have split feelings about Kanye West because I think some of the things he's doing now I don't really understand. But I remember when I first started listening to him, he's one of the best lyricists that came out of the rap community. I mean,
I agree.
I mean, great lyrics. I mean, I don't know if it was in School Days or I forgot which album it was from. But he had this lyric that stuck in my head to this day. And he says, "Oh, my people, for that dollar, how low we'll stoop. But when you riding in your Benz, you're still a nigga in a coupe." Remember that?
Yeah, that was All Falls Down.
All falls down.
Yeah.
And the truth of that and the truth of many of his other lyrics, I just, in those days, I thought that he was one of the, because it wasn't just about beats and sex. It was about content, about social content, etc. But I think after his mother's death, something happened. I'm not sure what it was. I can't speak for him, but he went on a different path. And so, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, you know, like when I interviewed D.L. Hughley, he basically said, you know, after Kanye said that, fuck him forever.
When you make white people, white racists feel good about themselves and go, see, fuck you forever. I mean it.
You know, no type of apology will make up for statements like that. You know, putting an asterisk by slavery. Yeah.
Well, did you see the Entertainment Tonight interview? Did you see that?
Oh, that was TMZ.
Yeah, yes. and
TMZ.
that was amazing. That was. But the young man represented a lot of the feelings of our community about some of those statements.
As I'm going through your accomplishments, you're appointed by Bill Clinton to the National Endowment of Humanities. You got a Lifetime Achievement Tribute from the Directors Guild of America. Both on the acting side and the directing side, I think you've done phenomenal work.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, you did it with dignity. You did it with self-respect. You tackled a lot of social issues that other people would not have done. And I think that the legacy that you've left is amazing. And I think that the most interesting part, and you've talked about this in other interviews, is that, you still love what you do. You wake up every morning, you can't wait to get to work. You said something interesting in this other interview where most people, when they get confronted between making a choice between happiness and stability, most people will take stability. But you actually went the other way.
Yes. I came up in a family of hardworking people who appreciated the dollars that they made from their work, but hated their jobs. Mm-hmm. And they would retire and were dead within 5 to 10 years. And I saw the pain of that. I had uncles who were musicians and singers and stuff. But in those days it was hard for them, and they didn't have the faith in themselves to continue against the obstacles that they faced. But some of the best voices I've ever heard, some of the best comedy I've ever heard was in my family. But I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to take the chances. And that's what I talk about in my autobiography, my 40 years behind and in front of the camera. I respect all the people who provide for their families, send their kids to college, pay for their homes, insurance, retirement. There's a security in that. But financial and social and security in a social platform does not fill all the vacuums we have inside. I have some friends that are very wealthy and very unhappy at the same time. So it's about finding that balance. How do you live a life of fulfillment where you literally, when you wake up in the morning, you want to go to work because you love what you do.
Yeah.
And you're people like yourself, you love what you do. You have a passion.
Yeah.
And
it's obvious.
Yeah, and so do I. And you pay a price for that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the reward is far beyond the price you pay. And so I try to encourage people in my book to, for example, I talk about the business of Hollywood. I mean, I have a foundation, the Duke Media Foundation, and a lot of the kids come in there with passion. They want to be in the business. But we teach them the business. We teach them, okay, you want to be an actor, you want to be a director, you want to be a writer. That's all good. But do you understand the craft of those things? And do you understand the business of Hollywood? Because those of us who didn't understand the business coming in were damaged because we just were passionate. Passion without a plan is called frustration. So we try to give that back, but it's a rewarding business, but as you know, difficult also.
It is. But in 2018, going into 2019, you have more opportunities than ever before to not only create your own content, but own your own content. And I say this a lot. The reason why I started Vlad TV is because I just realized that no one else was going to put me on. I just was not going to get any chances from anybody. I got You know, Hollywood, even to this day, as established as we are, I've had so many talks about TV deals and so forth, and none of them have come, have turned into anything. But it doesn't matter because I own all my own content. I create it all, and it really doesn't matter. I've done a great business that I could support my family with and so forth. But don't wait for anyone to put you on. Not in 2018. Put it out yourself. You mentioned people have created movies using iPhones. People have become YouTube stars.
I just worked on one with Steven. I mean, what you're saying is so encouraging because what you're saying is don't wait for Hollywood to discover you. Discover yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are examples. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's been, 10 years, right? Start off as webisodes.
Yep.
Issa Rae has a big deal with HBO.
Yep, she started out on YouTube.
You know what I'm saying? So you really don't. I mean, I acted in the film in New York this year with Steven Soderbergh. He shot the entire feature film. It's called High Flying Bird, with 4 or 5 iPhone 8s. There was no big lighting crew. He was mostly available light. And one of the funniest things was there was no dolly track or dolly. When he did dolly shots, they rolled him around in the wheelchair. And he used to eat dinner, and go edit the footage that night that he shot.
Yep.
So the thing is, what you're saying is profound in the sense that I had this young actress recently who came to me for advice, and she had just spent, I think, $1,700 or more on pictures. And I said, why? Well, he's a famous photographer. I said, okay, if you're a casting director, you think the casting director will see your picture or something you've acted in? She said, something I've acted in. I said, are you taking acting classes? She says, yes, for the last 4 or 5 years. I said, did you ever film any of the scenes that you did with your acting partners? She said, no. But that changed her way of thinking about how to present herself because she's waiting to be discovered. I just think that today, there was no internet when I came along. There were no cell phones. I remember the first cell phone, the sucker was this big.
Right, the brick phone.
The brick phone.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so kids today, I mean, all of us today have opportunities not only for the creation of content, but the distribution.
Yep.
You go global with a push of a button.
Exactly.
Does that make any sense?
Exactly. We do, we had a record month last month on Vlad TV, on our YouTube channel. We had 53 million views in 1 month. Wow. We do roughly 2 million a day, give or take a couple 100,000. 53 million people watched these videos that we created, that we put out with no network, we own everything. And I think for me, the most important thing is that I got tired of presenting my ideas and having people tell me whether or not they wanted to co-sign them. I get to interview, and that's the thing. I get to wake up every morning and I think, who do I really want to talk to today? Bill Duke. I loved all these movies he did. I'm going to go ahead and talk to him because I want to do it and I'm going to put it out. And I think my audience will react to it, but if not, whatever. then the next day I'll go do someone else. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's so important, is the control, the ownership.
It's the future.
Yeah.
It's the future. And you're an example of that. I mean, how many TV shows that are on the air now, how many feature films that you know of have attracted 53 million eyeballs?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
just the business model itself.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, and we try to give this to our kids in our foundation, that you can do it now, but we want you to learn the craft, so it's not just garbage, but you learn the craft of it, And then you have access today. I remember when I was coming along and I talked to kids about this, they never heard these two words, flatbed and a moviola. Because in those days, it was actually film. And when they say cutting film, you literally took a razor blade or scissors and cut the film and pasted it together, right? When you edited, right?
Yep.
I remember when George Lucas had the first digital machine. It blew our minds. So it's a totally different world and a totally different time, and we have to have our kids leverage that.
Absolutely. And if you ever want me to come talk to, the kids in your foundation, I'd be more than happy to.
I would love to.
Yeah. Bring in someone that's actually doing, some of the stuff you're talking about independently without any sort of financing or anything else like that. Yeah, I would love to present that to them.
Great. Thank you so much.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Bill Duke, man, thank you so much for coming through. Huge fan. I'm going to go watch Menace to Society after this. I've already interviewed Tyron Turner, who told me, the whole behind the scenes thing. But like I said, huge fan, man, and congratulations for all the work, both in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Thank you so much, man. Forgive my swollen lip from the dentist, but this was a great interview, great questions and insight, man. I really appreciate it. And I want to tell folks again, man, please go check my book out, Bill Duke, 40 Years in Front of and Behind the Camera. I think you'll find it's about my life and career, but also try to put some nuggets in there for young folks in terms of the business itself. The second thing I would say is Mandy. It's a film I'm in with Nicolas Cage. It's doing very, very well, and it's something I think that people will really, really like as I'm not a horror movie person, but it's gotten such play. It's got a 95% rating on positive rating on Rotten Tomato, and it's coming back out in the theaters. And so I'm just really fortunate to be working. And the last thing I would say, check me out on Black Lightning. It's a great show. It's a black action hero show, and
Right.
It's on every Tuesday at 9 o'clock on CW, and it's something that I think people will like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because they just announced that Luke Cage just got canceled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Luke Cage just got canceled. They're actually in production for their third season, and Netflix just canceled it. So I guess Black Lightning is the only black superhero show left on television.
So far, so good.
Yeah, no doubt. Bill Duke, man, until next time.
God bless you, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Peace.